Get my 6. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Homesteading Off the Grid. Feeling good today. Thumbs up. As far as progress goes, I've made some. The progress has slowed. All day I've felt like I've had a kind of a dull headache, but throughout the day I've taken nothing. No OTC, no Advil, no Dayquil, none of that. This is the first day since the day after testing positive, which was 6 days ago, that I've not taken anything because I don't like to put, stuff in my system if I don't need it. And so I've just continued to drink plenty of fluids, get plenty of rest, had a nap for about an hour and a half today. I've come out a couple times and just walked around to make sure to keep moving. But now to the good stuff. I was going to talk about something I do about this time every year, at least for the last few years, because it's kind of led to an epiphany. And just as I realized this, I realized I wasn't doing what I was trying to do. Let me do my best to make that make sense. I discovered a book and an entire philosophy a few years ago that was recommended to me by a retired gentleman that I think highly of. The book is called The Power of Now. The author is Eckhart Tolle. And it's an entire philosophy based upon the concept of staying in the now, because this is where life takes place. If we spend too much time in the past, reliving old glories or regretting past mistakes, that can lead to depression. If we spend too much time projecting ahead, thinking about the future, that can lead to anxiety or fear. The only time that truly exists, according to this philosophy, is now. It takes constant effort to follow this philosophy. And my epiphany was this. I had a birthday last month, November, and for some reason I always reread this book on my birthday. I've slowed my pace with reading it now. I'm only reading a chapter or two a day, almost as if I'm studying it even more in depth. And something else I also do around this time of year every year, now that we're towards the end of December, just a couple of days before Christmas as of this recording, I often will come up with my New Year's resolution list. I don't really make resolutions in the past. I've always just set goals. It's not so much about all the things I'm not going to do anymore. It's about goals. What would I like to achieve in the upcoming year? I set out to do this yesterday, and it occurred to me that by doing that, I'm not staying in the moment. I'm not living in the now. And so I scrapped that plan. This is the first time in many years. I can't remember when the last time was that I didn't sit down and come up with my list of goals for the new year, because that is projection into the future, and I'm staying in the now. I actually bought copies of this book, multiple copies of this book. They came in yesterday, got delivered, because I'm giving them as Christmas gifts. That's how powerful this book is, and I'd recommend everybody out there who has issues with maybe living in the past too much or maybe fearing the future too much, get this book and read it. So anyway, I'm sitting there in my reading nook upstairs in my house, and I've got the bird feeders set up, so I put the seed in it, and there's blue jays and there's cardinals, and it helps me focus on staying in the now, living in the moment, watching the birds, feeling what, and right now, in my now doesn't feel too great having this virus, but I'm allowing myself to feel it, because you've probably heard it said that without the bad days, the good days wouldn't really mean as much as they do. So by fully allowing myself to feel what's going on with me now physically, I know that when the time comes that I'm back out there on that 5 or 6 mile run, when it feels like I'm not even laboring, I'm barely breathing, barely breaking a sweat, it's going to feel that much better. But yet my mind slipped to a different place, a different time altogether. It slipped to a time in which a friend of mine, I believe, was visited by a jinn, Jinn. It's an Arabic demon, an Arabic spiritual being. The beliefs in jinns go back thousands of years. Their believed existence not only precedes the Islamic faith, it precedes Christianity. So why am I sitting here thinking about a jinn as I'm watching the birds and trying to stay in the now? Well, several people off and on will comment in some of these videos that they see jinns in the background. I think most commonly people claim to see Bigfoot, Sasquatch, or Civil War ghosts. All kinds of weird stuff goes on around here, especially just before dark, which is about half an hour away. Especially where field meets forest, up here where land meets sky, and particularly when there's any sort of rain or moisture, that's when the veil grows thin. I can't discount the fact that people have mentioned jinns, and there's one video in particular, I'm not going to mention it. I kind of thought I saw the same thing. So I'm going to talk about some strange events that happened when I was in Iraq. Got this hat while I was over there, as well as some other conditions. Whatever. My mind slipped back to that place, I guess because I spent a Christmas there. It was an eventful Christmas. I'll just leave it at that. But I had a guy in my gun truck who was of Native American ancestrage, and he claimed his grandfather was a shaman. I don't know. But he would do some odd things. I thought they were odd. And early on in the deployment, I didn't believe any of it to be true. This was before my very vast journey into the unknown began. This might have actually been the beginning, even though I had some odd experiences before this on mountaintops back in Appalachia that I wouldn't come to understand as having been odd experiences until after I delved deeper into studying these events. The supernatural, the spiritual realm, the other side of the veil, whatever you want to call it, paranormal. So he was our truck commander, and he would do this thing called astral projection. And this is a concept of where your spiritual being actually leaves your physical body and goes out into the universe for various reasons. This guy, and I wrote about this as if it were fiction in my book Isle of Capri, which is an awesome book. If you haven't read it, your life is not nearly as fulfilling as it could be if you'd read Isle of Capri. And you can get it with my autograph from our Etsy store. The link's in the description box below. And of course, you can get it on Amazon in Kindle or print. But every time before we'd leave the gate to go out at night on our missions, while everybody else, the adrenaline's running, your senses are becoming more keen, more aware of your surroundings. You're looking out, prepared to watch out for the snipers, the IEDs, the distractions. The civilians would try to make it look like something was going on that wasn't to lure you in so they could ambush you, all these things. This guy would lay down in his truck, and it looked like he's going to sleep, like playing possum almost. His eyes would almost entirely close. They'd glaze over a little bit. But he wasn't asleep. He was astrally projecting. And he would do this for like the first hour of the mission. And he'd come out of it and he'd say, "Don't worry, we're fine. Don't worry, we're fine." This went on for weeks. And I thought, man, this guy's going to get us killed because he's got to be pulling security on his sector. I was a machine gunner, so I was watching my sector, and then his as well, because he was playing possum or whatever. So I remember the first night he comes to and he goes, we need to be very alert at checkpoint 7. And I was like, why? Because you'd go every hour or so. There'd be a new checkpoint. You'd call your commander, "Hey, we just made it through the checkpoint." And once all the trucks got through, the convoy commander would call back to the TOC, the operational center, say, okay, we made it through this checkpoint. That way, everybody always knew where everybody was. It was safety. If they needed to send out reinforcements, they knew where to go. They would know where they had last contact with the convoy, all this stuff. He said, checkpoint 7, be very alert. Something's going to happen at checkpoint 7. And I said, what are you talking about? He says, there's an angry jinn. He says, I can't tell if it's a jinn or an ancestor spirit, but something on the other side of the veil that doesn't exist in our world as we can see it is angry and upset and is going to cause a problem. I'm thinking, okay, whatever. We get to checkpoint 7. We always played snake. Trucks would slow down and stop, and then they'd pick up speed, like in a traffic jam. You start moving, slinky type snake thing. Get to checkpoint 7, and we would escort empty tractor trailers. We ran the supply line. Empty tractor trailers north one night. The next night we'd bring back trucks full of supplies to Mosul, and then of course the next night they'd go down to Baghdad, just distribute stuff all over the country from there. So we get to checkpoint 7, and one of the rules was no one was allowed to get out of the trucks, even the drivers of the trucks that we were escorting. So we get to checkpoint 7. And we're stopped. I thought I heard a growl, something like that. You might have to go back and put your earbuds in. There was a couple trucks ahead of us. One of the Iraqi security guards, for some reason, comes out of his little security shed with a cinder block and throws it through the windshield of this tractor trailer. Well, the Turkish driver gets out. These guys get into a scuffle. Of course, my natural instinct is to do something about it, perhaps get out. My truck commander says, stay in the truck, stay in the truck. It's a setup. So these guys all of a sudden, with nobody intervening between them, just stop. And they're standing there looking around. They're looking back at our truck, our gun truck. So I immediately know to start scanning, looking around for snipers, somebody hidden somewhere that's trying to take a shot at us. They were trying to lure us out of the truck. It didn't work. It was a setup. Guy got back in his truck. We kept going. And this was not uncommon to know that there were spies in our midst, traitors in our midst. I mean, they'd sell us out for a little bit of money. You could trust no one. Trust no one over there. It's how it was. So anyway, we keep going. And my TC, a short time later, he says, it's attached itself to us. It's a jinn. Be alert. Watch for tomfoolery. Look out for prankish type tricks. But whatever you do, don't get out of the truck. Keep your hands on your weapon at all times. We get a little bit further up the road. We're in what we consider to be a safe zone. It was Kurdistan, the autonomous region controlled at the time by the Kurds. I'm hearing footsteps. Keep getting my 6. Convoy stops, and we sit forever and ever. There was a truck breakdown. One of the tractor trailers that was empty, of course, but going up to get supplies was broken down. There were some guys out fixing it. Of course, we stayed in the truck, pulling security. We didn't find this out until later, when we finally got to our northern post. But one of our NCOs, an E5, had gotten out of his truck, and he ended up breaking his leg. Here's how that happened. He claimed to have seen a funny-looking little odd man running along the tops of the trucks and jumping from truck to truck. He saw this. He felt compelled to get out and confront this individual. So he climbs out of his gun truck, jumps onto the semi behind him, which happened to be a tanker. It was a fuel truck. Okay? So he's got his M4. he totally was not supposed to do this. He didn't ask anybody for permission. He was the truck commander of his truck, so he outranked. I think he was in a truck with an E4 and an E3. He told him to sit tight. This is a story that came out later. So he's on the hood of the semi. He looks all the way back to the back of the end of the tanker, and there's this funny looking little man goading him to come after him. The man didn't have any weapons, but he was flipping him the bird, shaking his butt at him, mooning him, doing all kinds of stuff. So the E5 starts walking back across this tanker, and the lid on the top of the tanker was missing. It was pitch black dark. The sergeant didn't have his night vision on. He fell into that tanker. Now, fortunately, it was empty. It wasn't filled with fuel. It was probably a 6 or 8 feet drop. Fell into the tanker, broke his leg, broke his shin bone. So he got in trouble for that, of course, because he broke protocol. He put his entire gun truck at risk. This could have been somebody trying to lure him out of there because maybe they had a bomb. Any number of things could have happened worse than what did happen. They had a heck of a time getting him out of the back of the truck or getting him out of the tanker. So they had to reach down in and lift him out. I can't remember exactly how they got him out. But he ended up being sent home. He had a broken leg. He couldn't stay. So this was about 3 months before our deployment was over. And after the deployment, of course, I ended up spending 6 months in the Warriors in Transition Battalion at Fort Lewis. It was Fort Lewis at the time. It's now Joint Fort Lewis McChord. They joined the Air Force McChord base and the Army base Lewis together, one base now. And that truck commander of mine, who claims to have been in the direct bloodline of a Native American shaman, he came up to see me a couple of times. And the first time he came up, he had stopped by to see the E5, who was stationed at the same place. When he got sent back, this is where the Wounded Warriors on the West Coast would go. This place was kind of like the Walter Reed of the West Coast. Walter Reed, of course, being in D.C. My sergeant told me, whatever you do, stay away from, Sergeant. I'm not going to mention the guy's name. And I said, why is that? And he goes, look, you remember he claimed to have seen a guy, a funny-looking little man that led him down the back of the truck and ended up causing him to break his leg. And I said, yeah, I know the story. He goes, that what he saw wasn't human. It was a jinn. It was that prankish jinn. It was the same jinn that, caused or was involved with the setup of the cinder block going through the windshield of the truck in front of us just a couple of hours before that happened. And he said the jinn attached itself to this guy and it came home with him, and it is slowly driving him insane. Whatever you do, stay away from, as much as you care about the guy because he was in our unit. And should you see some prankish little old man that looks like he's out of place on a U.S. base here, in Washington State, definitely stay away from that character. I'd seen enough oddities during my year spent with this guy in Iraq to know that there were things that had happened, like that night itself, that I couldn't explain. So I followed his advice. And like I said, I was there for 6 months, and I would see the sergeant from time to time. His leg healed nicely. It healed relatively quickly, but they would not release him. They wouldn't let him go. He was being held for psychological reasons. I got out 6 months later, and when I left, the man was still there, and he was damn near catatonic. I mean, I would at least speak to him when I saw him. I would say, hello, Sergeant. I'd go to parade rest because I was just an E4. When I left, the man was seeing through me. I would say, good afternoon, Sergeant, go to parade rest. He would walk by like I wasn't even there. He hadn't even heard me. So again, while I was trying to stay in the now, be present in the moment, because this is where life takes place for some reason, and I think it's because it's almost Christmas, and spent a Christmas there, and memories do pop up. just found myself thinking about that. And a couple of people today had noted in some videos that they believed they were seeing jinns in the background. So I hope they're wrong. See you for more next time.